Before we get into today's content, I want to encourage you guys to go head over to EC Henry's channel and check out his new video. As many of you know, EC Henry and I are working on something very special. Before that's ready, you can get your Star Wars fix by checking out his design of a Y-Wing successor. Alright, roll the intro. 11 years after the Battle of Yavin in the Star Wars Legends timeline, Han Solo and his trusty co-pilot Chewbacca were sent out on a mission as representatives of the New Republic. This would trigger a set of events which would eventually culminate in the death of billions. However, there's a lot of background to cover before we get there. If you want to skip straight to the action, I've put a timestamp up on the screen. Just scrub forward. Everyone else, sit back and enjoy the ride. The planet the two smugglers were traveling to, or rather, two New Republic representatives were traveling to, was Kessel. Let's turn to Book 1 of the Jedi Academy trilogy for the reasoning behind their journey. Kessel was a major planet for spice production and seat of heavy smuggling activities, as well as the site for one of the toughest prisons in the galaxy. With the Civil War ended and the New Republic once again firmly seated on Coruscant, leaving scattered groups of Imperial warships to fight each other, it was time to reopen negotiations with the planet. Now, moving away from the text itself, of course things didn't go well for Han and Chewie on this voyage, and former rival of the two from the Imperial days, Morith Duel, managed to capture Han and Chewie, placing them in the quite infamous
Spice Mines of Kessel.
There, while mining the drug glitter stim and trying not to be consumed by massive and deadly glitter spiders, Han and Chewie met a young man named Kyp Durron. Kyp was only a teenager, born 7 years before the destruction of the first Death Star. His parents were opponents of the Galactic Empire and were arrested as the government they protested became more authoritarian following the destruction of Alderaan. The family was sentenced to hard labor duties in the spice mines, while Kyp's brother Zeth was conscripted into the Imperial military. It had been 11 years since his sentencing, with the mines and prisons of Kessel changing hands after the Galactic Civil War. Nonetheless, Kyp remained trapped underground. However, something was also awakening within him, and he began to discover latent force abilities, and at one point was even trained by wizened Jedi Vima Dabota. Kyp, along with Han and Chewie, worked together to escape the spice mines in the planet of Kessel. They stole a shuttle, and thanks almost totally to Kyp's force powers and intuition, managed to survive several very near-death situations, even flying through the Maw, with only Kyp's force powers guiding them. However, as fate would have it, they would stumble across the Maw installation, which, like Kyp, had been segregated from the rest of the galaxy since before the Emperor's death. Our heroes were in prison. Kyp was in jail again after only having his freedom for mere hours. Kyp's hate for the Empire deepened to new levels. His anger and hate opened him to the dark side of the Force. Thankfully, well, not for the folks of Krita, the three managed to escape the station with the help of Qui Jux, a naive Imperial weapons scientist. They did so by stealing the Sun Crusher, a nearly indestructible superweapon with the power to destroy entire star systems. The four escaped the forces of Natasi Dala, the ranking Imperial officer at the Maw installation, and returned to the New Republic, with Han and the boy now having developed a very close bond. Although Kyp was beginning to heal from over a decade of hard labor and of course the loss of his family, the pain still simmered very near the surface. At this time, Luke was also beginning to establish his new Jedi Order, and after testing Kyp and recognizing his immense power, offered the young man a spot at his Praxium. After some time relaxing on Coruscant and yes, going skiing with Han Solo, he departed for Yavin 4. On his way to the moon, Kyp helped the New Republic rid the galaxy of the Sun Crusher, sending the vessel into the gas giant of Yavin, and everyone lived happily ever after, right? No. Kyp, however, did flourish at the Academy, and was Luke's most successful student by miles, even approaching Luke in terms of pure power. Impatient and seeking opportunities beyond what Luke could give him, Kyp and fellow student Dorsk81 chose to spend their free time exploring Yavin, and they found a forgotten temple. Entering the temple, Kyp was approached by a spirit who seduced him with the endless power he sought, as the dark side often does. This spirit was Exar Kun, who had already killed one of Luke's students, Gantoris. Exar Kun used not only the young Jedi's desire for power and his arrogance, but also Kyp's hate for the Empire to put him under the dark side's influence, and from this point on, Kyp was more or less totally controlled by Exar Kun. He continued to grow more powerful, but was at the mercy of the dark side. He defeated Luke in a lightsaber duel, attacked other students in the philosophical defense of Exar Kun, and with the help of the Sith Lord, incapacitated Luke Skywalker. With a desire to burn the Empire to the ground, and without any formal oversight, Kyp used the Force to rip the Sun Crusher out of the heart of the Yavin gas giant. He departed the Praxium with two targets, Dala, who had recently imprisoned him on Maw Installation, and the Karita system, where he believed his brother Zeth may be located. And this is where things get mass murdery. Kyp first headed to the Cauldron Nebulon, where Dala's fleet was stationed. Using the Sun Crusher's resonant torpedoes, he destroyed the entire nebula, including several inhabited star systems, as well as most of Dala's stationed fleet. He then traveled to the Karita system and the planet Karita itself, which served as a major training center for the Imperial military. He demanded that the Academy on Karita tell him the fate of his brother, and after they wrongly stated that Zeth had died during training, Kyp, in anger, fired a resonance torpedo into Karita's star, which in 2 hours would go supernova, destroying the system. Minutes before the cataclysm, Kyp is contacted by the Academy, who tells him that Zeth is still alive. He rushes to the planet's surface, but is unable to save his brother as the dying sun finally explodes. Millions on the planet are killed instantly, including the last surviving member of Kyp's family. As with Alderaan, the destruction of Karita caused a massive disturbance in the Force. Here's a couple of quotes from Champions of the Force, Book 3 of the Jedi Academy trilogy. "A strangling outcry of death shattered Leia's soul. It sounded like an avalanche within the Force, an outcry of thousands upon thousands of lives wiped out in an instant. Around the table, the other Jedi candidates, all those sensitive to the Force, clutched at their chests or their ears. Streen let out a long wail. It's too many, too many. Leia's blood burned through her veins. Painful claws skittered down her spine, plucking her nerves and sending jolts through her body. Both of the Jedi twins were crying. Baffled, Han grabbed Leia's shoulders and shook her. 'What is it, Leia? What happened?' He apparently had felt nothing. 'What?' She gasped. It was a great disturbance in the Force. Something terrible just happened. With a cold wash of dread, Leia thought of young Kyp Durron, turned to the dark side, and now armed with the Sun Crusher. Something terrible, she said again, but could not answer Han's other questions. The Force moved through all things, weaving the universe into an invisible tapestry that tied the smallest living creature to the largest star cluster. Synergy made the total far greater than the sum of its parts, and when one of those threads was torn, ripples spread through the entire web, actions and reactions, great shock waves that affected all who could hear. The destruction of Karita screamed through the Force, building power as it reflected off other sensitive minds. It rose to a tumult that struck and woke. Kyp would continue his rampage, destroying at least one more system in the deep core. However, as the members of Luke's Jedi Praxium came together, they were able to defeat Exar Kun, and Kyp was pacified by Han Solo, the dark side Lord's presence no longer affecting him, and the two returned to the New Republic. Back on Coruscant, Kyp's crimes were laid bare. He had destroyed several inhabited star systems. All this after the New Republic had consciously decided not to use the superweapon. "Wait a minute," Han said. The council members glared at him, but he ignored their silent rebukes. I know, but listen to me for a minute. Kyp wasn't himself. He was possessed by the evil spirit of a Sith Lord who has since been defeated." Mon Mothma's words wheezed out from her cracked lips. Her voice came out in a ragged whisper. "Kyp Durron," she said, "you have the blood of millions, perhaps billions on your hand. We are a governing body here, not a judicial council. We have no right to decide your fate. You must be judged by the Jedi Master. We are not qualified to judge your crimes." Luke, of course, saw Kyp as redeemable, and the young Jedi began to atone for his sins. He traveled with Luke to the Maw Installation, which was now under control of the New Republic. As the station forces were attacked by the Death Star prototype, another Maw Installation superweapon, Kyp used the Sun Crusher to lure the station into the Maw black hole cluster in an apparent act of self-sacrifice. Kyp, however, was able to survive by placing himself in a jettisoned pod. Kyp Durron would go on to be one of the greatest Jedi of not only Luke's order, but of history. He figured notably during the Yuuzhan Vong War, where, unlike Luke, he favored aggression against the alien invaders. This put him at odds with not only the Grandmaster, but especially Jaina Solo, who he tricked into helping destroy a Vong outpost at Cernpadal. He was nonetheless a war hero, and his fighter squadron, Kyp's Dozen, was known as one of the best in the galaxy. Still, the events of 11 ABY and his murder of perhaps billions would follow him throughout his life. Even before the war, his independence from the Order and his hunting of smugglers without oversight was used as proof of Jedi overreach. But that's all for today. What do you think of Kyp Durron, the Sun Crusher, and if you've read it, the Jedi Academy trilogy? Let me know all of that and more down in the comments. Today's question of the day comes from Kazriel, who asks, at Thanksgiving dinner, what's the first thing Thrawn would reach for? Well, I don't think Thrawn would reach for anything. Instead, he'd prefer to let someone else make his plate for him. That way, he could evaluate the design and artistic features of how the food's laid out and learn a lot about whoever was serving him. I am mostly just kidding, but that is a funny question, and I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, or at least all my American viewers. I know I'm a day late, but I had to sub in a video yesterday, so I didn't include any special Thanksgiving salutations. For those wondering, and I've had this asked a few times as well, in Canada we have Thanksgiving earlier, so it wasn't Thanksgiving for me yesterday. Anyway, as always guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.